Friday morning, the Anchor Line plant floor smells of coffee and hot metal, and 40 workers look up as Marlon Tate stands at the mezzanine rail in his grey work jacket, clipboard under his arm. The CEO holds out a folder and orders him to sign off on a batch of brake parts that failed safety testing. He refuses, calm and quiet, and her hand cracks across his face in front of every one of them. No child should see their father hit like that. He doesn't step back, doesn't touch his cheek. Behind her, the head of her own security detail stops moving when he notices the raised scar running up Marlon's forearm. Chapter 1. The walkthrough. The mezzanine smelled like fresh coffee and hot metal, the two things that never quite left the Anchor Line plant no matter how many air handlers ran. Marlon Tate stood at the rail with his clipboard against his hip, watching the morning shift move under him. Sparks off the grinding line, forklifts threading between pallets, the particular rhythm of 40 people who'd learned to trust the floor under their boots. He'd walked that floor for 6 years. He still checked the guardrails himself every Friday, out of habit more than duty. Mr. Tate. Priscilla Vance came off the elevator, already talking, her assistant a half-step behind with a folder, and behind them both, unhurried, a broad-shouldered man in a dark suit Marlon had seen twice before and never spoken to. Head of Executive Security, somebody had said. Theo something. Oh, Ms. Vance? Marlon set the clipboard down. Quarterly's ready when you are. Skip the tour. She took the folder from her assistant and held it out to him instead of opening it herself. I need your signature on the caliper batch, line 4, it's in there. He opened it standing up the way he read everything that mattered. Torque variance, 3 lots over spec, a compliance box already checked, in someone else's handwriting. This didn't pass, he said. It's a rounding issue. Legal already looked at it. It's not a rounding issue, it's a failed test. He kept his voice level, the way he kept it for the floor below them, where sound carried up through the rail better than anyone upstairs remembered. I'm not signing off on brake calipers that failed torque spec, so we can hit a shipping date. You're not signing off on anything, you're confirming a decision that's already been made. Her assistant had gone very still beside her. This quarter closes Friday, Marlon. I need this on a truck by Wednesday. Then it goes out with my name on the deviation, not my signature on the pass. Do you understand what you're doing right now? I understand exactly what I'm doing. Something in her face changed then, fast and total. The look of a woman who had never once needed to hear the word no twice. Don't ever challenge me in front of my own people, she said, and the slap came before he'd finished registering the sentence. Flat-palmed, hard enough to turn his head, loud enough that the sound cracked off the glass and carried down onto the floor below, where the grinding line kept running and 40 heads slowly did not. Marlon didn't touch his face, he didn't step back. He straightened the same half-inch he'd dropped and looked at her, and the stillness in him wasn't shock. It moved like something rehearsed a long time ago and never forgotten. Breath even, hands loose at his sides, weight settled low like a man who'd been hit harder than this, and had needed once to keep working anyway. Near the elevator, Theo Marrow's hand had drifted an inch off his hip before he caught it. He was watching Marlon's arms, not Vance's face. The wrong thing to watch if you didn't already know what you were looking for. I'll get him off my floor, Vance said, already turning away. Security. 2 men in grey uniforms started up the mezzanine stairs. Below, the grinding line had gone quiet by 1s and 2s, machine by machine, the way a factory shuts down when the people running it stop being sure their hands are steady. Nobody said anything. Ruth Calder, 30 feet down the rail, had a wrench still hanging from one hand. Forgotten. Marlon picked up his clipboard, set it under his arm, and walked toward the stairs on his own before the guards reached him. No argument, no explanation. his face doing nothing at all that the 40 people below could read. Chapter 2. What They Think They Saw. Ruth Calder caught him by his truck, wrench still in her back pocket like she'd forgotten to put it down all day. "They're saying you mouthed off to her," Ruth said, "that you entered her first." "Is that what it looked like from the floor?" "I don't know what it looked like, Marlon. I know what people are saying by lunch." She crossed her arms, not unkind, just tired. 12 years I've worked next to you. You've never raised your voice at anybody in this building."
"I didn't raise it today either."
"Then what happened?" He looked past her at the loading dock, at the lines still running behind it, slower now, everybody watching everybody else instead of their gauges. "Ask me again next week, Ruth." She didn't like that answer. He could see it land wrong, see her decide not to push it, and that not pushing sat heavier on him than if she'd yelled. At home that evening, Eli was quiet in the particular way that meant he already knew something. He picked at his rice, glanced at his phone twice, glanced at Marlon a third time before he set the fork down. "Tyler sent me a video," Eli said, "from work." Marlon kept his eyes on his own plate a beat too long. "Show me." Eli turned the phone around. 9 seconds, shaky, shot from the floor, looking up through the mezzanine rail, the sound of a slap, small and flat through a cheap phone speaker, and his father's face afterward, doing nothing. "You didn't hit her back," Eli said. It wasn't quite a question. "No." "Why not?" Marlon set his own fork down too. "Because hitting her back wouldn't have made either of us safer, and it would have given her exactly the story she wanted to tell about me." He held his son's eyes. "Not because I was scared, Eli. I need you to hear that part."
"Then why'd you just stand there?" "I didn't just stand there. I made a decision. Those aren't the same thing, even when they look the same on a phone screen."
Eli turned that over, the way he turned over most things his father said, slow and skeptical and 12. "Everybody at school's going to see it."
"I know."
"Are you going to get fired?"
"I don't know yet." Marlon reached over, squeezed his son's shoulder once, let go. "Eat your dinner. We'll figure out the rest of it."
The kitchen phone lit up on the counter before Eli had picked his fork back up. A number Marlon didn't have saved, area code he recognized on sight. "VA Regional Office," the screen said, plain as anything. He looked at it for exactly 1 ring, then reached over and silenced it, face giving away nothing, and set it face down on the counter, the way a man sets down something he isn't ready to pick back up.
"Who's that?" Eli asked.
"Nobody important tonight." Eli studied him a second longer than Marlon liked, the same look Ruth had given him in the parking lot, the look of somebody doing arithmetic they didn't have all the numbers for yet. Then the house phone rang again, different tone, landline this time, and Marlon picked that one up on the first ring like he'd been waiting for it instead. "Mr. Tate," the voice said, crisp and unhappy. "Human Resources, we need you in on Monday morning to discuss the continuation of your employment." "I'll be there," Marlon said, and hung up, and didn't tell Eli what it meant because he didn't fully know himself yet. Chapter 3. The room with no windows. The conference room on the 3rd floor of the Anchor Line offices had no windows, just a long table, recessed lighting, and a box of tissues nobody had touched, sitting dead center, like a warning. Marlon sat across from a company attorney he didn't recognize, and a folder that had clearly been prepared before he'd even walked in. Theo Marrow stood near the door, arms folded, the way security stands when they're told to be present and told nothing else. "We'd like to offer you a separation package," the attorney said, sliding the folder across. 12 weeks severance, continued benefits through the quarter, and a standard confidentiality agreement covering the incident on Friday. Marlon opened it, read the first page, didn't touch the pen beside it. This says, "I agree the incident didn't happen the way it happened." It says you agree not to discuss it publicly. Same thing, dressed different. He slid it back an inch. Not far, just enough to mean something. I'm not signing that. Mr. Tate, I'd encourage you to think about what refusing this costs you. No package, no neutral reference, an HR file that says whatever the company decides, it says. I've thought about it since Friday morning. His voice stayed even, the same register it had held on the mezzanine. I'm not signing paperwork that turns a lie into policy.
This isn't about the caliper report.
It's entirely about the caliper report. He looked at the attorney, not unkindly, just plainly. You want my signature so nobody ever has to ask why a manager got slapped for refusing to falsify a safety document. I understand the ask. The answer's still no. The attorney's jaw tightened, and he reached for a second document instead, the kind of move that meant the first one hadn't worked the way it was supposed to. Marlon reached past it for a pen he didn't intend to use, just to have something in his hand, and the motion pulled his shirt cuff up his forearm an inch further than he meant it to. The scar ran from his wrist toward his elbow, pale and puckered, skin grafted in a pattern that didn't happen from falling off a ladder. The kind of mark that told a very specific story to anyone who'd ever seen one made the same way. Theo Marrow's arms came uncrossed. He didn't say anything. He didn't move from the door. But something in his face had gone somewhere else entirely, some private arithmetic starting up behind his eyes, and his gaze stayed fixed on that stretch of forearm, a full 3 seconds longer than the room had any reason for. Marlon noticed him noticing. He pulled the cuff back down, unhurried, the way he did most things, though for just a moment his hand paused on the fabric, a beat too long to be nothing. I'll need you to sign something today, Mr. Tate, the attorney said. One way or another. Then I'll be signing my name to a written objection instead. You can attach it to whatever file you're building. The attorney closed the folder, unhappy, already reaching for his phone to call someone upstairs. Theo said nothing at all, just excused himself, stepped into the hallway, and pulled out his own phone before the door had fully shut behind him. Through the narrow strip of glass beside the frame, Marlon watched him stand there, phone to his ear, eyes lifting once to find Marlon's through the glass, and hold there, unreadable, before he turned and walked the length of the hall, alone. Chapter 4, The Name in the File. By Monday afternoon, the 9-second video had a caption on it Marlon hadn't written, and 40,000 views he hadn't asked for. A local news account shared it with 3 words. CEO slaps employee. And by the time Priscilla Vance saw it on her own phone, her jaw had already set into the shape it took when she stopped negotiating with a situation and started managing it. Get legal on the phone, she told her assistant, not looking up. I want a defamation letter drafted today, and I want the board notified that we're terminating Tate for cause before this becomes a story we don't control. The video makes it look. I don't care how it looks. I care how it reads by Friday. 2 floors down, Ruth Calder sat at her kitchen table that same evening with her laptop open to an email she hadn't been asked to write. 12 years, she typed, never once late, never once combative, never once anything but careful with the people under him. Whatever happened on that mezzanine, it did not start with Marlon Tate. She read it twice, sent it to HR before she could talk herself out of it, and closed the laptop like she'd gotten away with something. In the security office, Theo Marrow had a government database open and a name typed into it that had been sitting in his chest since Wednesday. He'd requested Marlon's employment file first, standard, nothing flagged. And then, because the scar wouldn't leave him alone, he'd gone looking somewhere else. Public commendation records. Unit rosters, the parts that weren't sealed. It took him 40 minutes to find the string of letters and numbers he was looking for. And when he did, his hand went still on the mouse.
Objective Rhino.
He knew that name. His brother had said it exactly once, home on leave, 3 weeks before the deployment, that didn't end the way any of them had let themselves imagine. Dale hadn't talked much about the work itself, but he'd talked about a medic, once, at their mother's kitchen table, in the specific tone people use for the one thing they can't quite finish a sentence about. Theo sat with that a long moment before he closed the file. He found Vance in her office an hour later, and the question came halfway up his throat before he caught it, swallowed it whole, watched her finish a sentence about press timing, and said nothing at all about Objective Rhino or medics, or the sound his mother had made on the phone 11 years ago. Not yet. Not to her. He found Marlon instead in the employee lot, keys already in his hand. "Mr. Tate?" Theo's voice had lost the flat, professional register it usually carried. "I need a minute." Marlon stopped, unhurried, and looked at him the way he looked at most things now, waiting to see what kind of room this was before he decided how much of himself to bring into it.
"I looked at your file today," Theo said. "The parts that aren't sealed."
"That's your job. It's not why I looked." Theo's hand had come up without him deciding to move it, fingers flexing once at his side, like he needed somewhere to put the question building behind his teeth. "Objective Rhino, that designation's attached to your service record." Marlon's face didn't change, not exactly, but something in his stillness sharpened, the way a man goes quiet when he hears a name he thought had stayed buried. "I need to know if you were there," Theo said. "I need to know if you're the one my brother used to talk about." Chapter 5. Objective Rhino. Vance called the full floor together at 4 o'clock. Every shift stopped at once. 40-some people gathered loose around the mezzanine stairs where a portable microphone had been set up on a folding table, like this was a retirement, not a firing. "I want to be transparent with all of you," she said, voice pitched for the room. "Given the video that circulated, effective today, Marlon Tate's employment with Anchorline is terminated for insubordination and conduct."
"That's not what happened." Theo Marrow's voice came from the back of the group, and it carried the way a voice carries when it has never once been raised in that building before. He walked forward, past the folding table, past Vance's assistant, until he stood beside the microphone she hadn't offered him. "Theo..."
"You want to tell 40 people why he didn't hit you back?" He looked past her at the crowd, then found Marlon near the stairs, and something in his face had gone soft and certain at once. "I'll tell them if he won't."
Nobody moved. Down on the floor, machines that had been idling all shift finally went silent.
"My brother served with the Rangers," Theo said. "Objective Rhino 11 years ago to an ambush nobody planned for, wounded on the ground for 40 minutes before extraction. He came home and never talked about most of it. But he talked, once, about a medic who wouldn't stop working, who kept 3 men breathing under fire long enough for a satellite call home, who held a line by himself when the rest of the unit was pinned. My brother didn't make it, but he got that call. He got to say goodbye to our mother because one man refused to move from where he was needed." Theo's voice caught once, and he pushed through it. "I found the name in a sealed record yesterday, Marlon Tate. Same designation, same medic." The silence that followed didn't sound like shock so much as recalculation. 40 people running the same math at once. That was why he hadn't flinched on the mezzanine, Marlon thought, distant and clear, the way you notice a fact you'd stopped needing to explain to yourself a long time ago. Not composure. Just a body that had already learned once what it cost to move before you understood the whole situation. "This is a personnel matter," Vance said, too fast, reaching for the microphone Theo hadn't let go of. "Whatever Mr. Marrow believes he's found doesn't change the fact that Mr. Tate refused a direct... He refused to sign a report that said a failed brake caliper batch passed inspection," Ruth Calder said, stepping out of the crowd with a folder in her hand she hadn't planned on needing until an hour ago. "I pulled the original test data myself this morning. It's all here. Variants on 3 lots, exactly like he said. She held it up, not toward Vance, but toward the room. He didn't go at her first. He told the truth, and she hit him for it. A compliance officer near the loading dock, a woman Marlon barely knew by name, raised her hand slightly like she was in a meeting instead of standing on a factory floor. I can confirm the deviation log. It matches what Ruth's holding. Vance's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at the folder, at Theo, at the 40 faces now watching her instead of Marlon, and for the first time since she'd stepped off that elevator on Friday, she had no sentence ready. You slapped a decorated combat medic for refusing to falsify a safety report, Theo said. Quiet now, no performance left in it. In front of everyone who works for you.
That's not... Vance started and stopped, because there wasn't an ending to that sentence that didn't make it worse.
2 of the security guards who'd walked Marlon off the mezzanine 4 days earlier were standing near the stairwell now, and neither of them moved toward him. One of them, without seeming to decide to, took a half-step sideways, putting himself, however slightly, between Vance and the exit instead of between Marlon and the crowd. Marlon didn't say anything for a long moment. He looked at Theo, and something passed between them that didn't need more words than it had already gotten. A debt neither of them had asked for, paid in front of 40 strangers because there hadn't been a smaller way to do it.
I didn't do it to be thanked, Marlon finally said, to the room more than to Vance. I did it because somebody was going to get hurt driving a car with those calipers in it, and that mattered more to me than my job did.
Nobody clapped. It wasn't that kind of room, but nobody looked away either, and on a floor that 4 days ago hadn't known his name beyond a nod in the hallway, that felt like the loudest thing that had happened all week. Chapter 6. What the Floor Remembers. The board suspended Priscilla Vance on Thursday, pending an independent review of the caliper inspection records and separately of what 4 days of footage showed happening on a mezzanine in front of 40 witnesses. Nobody at Anchorline needed a memo to understand which part of that review would take longer. By Friday, the caliper batch had been recalled from 3 regional distributors before a single unit reached a dealership, and the compliance officer who'd raised her hand on the floor that day was reassigned to lead the audit herself. Marlon came back to work the following Monday. Nobody had officially reinstated him. Ruth had simply told the interim plant director that the line ran better with him on it, and the interim plant director, who had watched the video like everyone else, hadn't argued. Ruth found him at the rail before his first shift back, in almost the same spot he'd been standing in the week before.
I should have believed you the first day, she said, instead of asking you to explain yourself to me like I was owed something. You weren't wrong to ask, Ruth. You just didn't have anything to go on yet.
That's a kinder way of putting it than I deserve. 12 years, and I still needed a video and a folder before I trusted my own eyes. Maybe. He almost smiled. I'll take the apology anyway. Doesn't cost either of us anything to say it out loud. She stood there a second longer than the conversation needed, like she wanted to add something else and decided against it, then squeezed his arm once and went back to her line. By Wednesday, a laminated sheet had gone up next to the safety board by the time clock, company letterhead at the top, plain language underneath. Any employee could refuse to sign off on a report, inspection, or procedure they believed to be false without disciplinary consequence, pending review by an independent safety officer. No name attached to it anywhere. The floor started calling it the floor safety line within a day. The way things get named by the people who actually use them rather than the people who write them. Marlon read it once, standing in front of the board with his coffee going cold, and didn't say anything to anyone about it. Ruth, passing behind him with a clipboard, bumped his shoulder lightly and kept walking, which was its own kind of sentence. By lunch, 3 different people on the floor had stopped him just to say they'd read it too. Not thank yous exactly, more like people confirming out loud that something had actually changed and wasn't going to quietly unchange itself in a month. One of the younger machinists, a kid barely 20 who'd been on the floor the day of the slap, asked him straight out if it would really hold up if he ever had to use it. "It'll hold," Marlon told him, "and if it doesn't, you come find me before you sign anything." The local news account that had first shared the video ran a follow-up 2 weeks later, this time with the caliper recall and the board's statement on Vance's status: termination, not suspension. Effective the same day the independent review closed. Marlon didn't watch it when it aired. Eli sent him a screenshot from school with no comment attached, and Marlon texted back a single thumbs up and nothing else because there wasn't a sentence that felt worth spending on it. 2 other plants in the region, and not Anchor Line's competitors, people Ruth knew from a supplier trade show, called to ask for a copy of the floor safety line language before the month was out. Ruth mentioned it to Marlon like she was reporting the weather, and he nodded like it was the weather too, though something in his chest sat a little easier hearing it. Theo Marrow stopped by the plant twice that month, once to give a statement to the board's investigators, once for no stated reason at all. The second time, he found Marlon in the break room and didn't sit down.
"I never got to say it right on the floor," Theo said. "Thank you for whatever you did over there, however long ago it was, to men I never got to meet except through my brother's mouth."
"I didn't do it so somebody would thank me for it 11 years later. I know." Theo turned his cup once on the table without drinking from it. "Doesn't mean it shouldn't get said. My mother's wanted to write a letter to whoever that medic was for 11 years. I think I finally get to tell her she can." "Tell her I said hello," Marlon said, and meant it more than the plainness of it let on. A few weeks later, Eli asked to see the photograph he'd never been allowed to look at. 3 men in desert fatigues, one of them laughing at something outside the frame, none of them older than Eli would be in 6 years. "Is that you?" "That's me." Marlon didn't reach for the rest of it. Some of it he'd carry alone a while longer, and that was fine. Monday morning, the grinding line started at 7, the same as always. From the rail, you'd have seen nothing worth a second look. A supervisor walking the floor, checking a guardrail out of habit more than duty. But the people on that floor knew, and when he passed the spot by the stairs, more than one of them straightened up a little, the way people do around someone they've finally decided to see.